So with Majesty, she came into us quite clearly heavily in foal. She had a very large abdomen, and I believe the vets she'd been to previously had done some blood tests, so we don't know she was in foal. What we tend to find with these horses, if you try and predict when they're going to give birth, they often don't follow the rule book. So basically, the team just monitored her really well. We had some nights checking her, because again, they tend to give birth at night time. And she did actually go into labour completely naturally herself during the night, and then gave birth to Monarch very successfully. My colleague Emma, one of the other vets, initially went and saw him during the evening just to make sure everything was going well, and he was absolutely fine at that stage. But the next morning I had a phone call from the team, just a little bit worried that they needed a bit more help. The mare was maybe not quite as settled as she should be. We don't know whether she'd had many foals before, but she wasn't really letting him feed very well. So I went over to see them, and yeah, clearly, she just wasn't really letting him suckle, and also he didn't seem to really know where to go, which is a bit of an issue, and it does happen sometimes.
So with Viennese, we were fairly certain she was soon to give birth. There were the usual signs. She started to bag up, ready to produce milk for her foal. So when she gave birth, initially she was a little nervous, a little naive and frightened of the whole experience. So she didn't let her foal, which we name Whirl, suckle straight away. And obviously a foal suckling straight away is really important. They get their fluids, they get their energy, but very importantly, in those first 24 hours, believe it or not, they get part of their immunity via their mum's first milk, which is known as colostrum. And in addition, we always check a mare after she's foaled, and we check her placenta too. What we want to make sure is no parts of that placenta are missing, that it's the right shape, all of it intact. If there is a part missing, it might be it's retained inside her, and that can lead to quite a life-threatening infection. And we found in the case of Viennese, she had retained some of her placenta, so we had two problems really.
So what we decided to do was give her some sedation, just to allow her to stand still for him, and then we sort of physically had to sort of guide him onto the teats. But eventually we did manage to get him onto her teat, and again that was a bit of an issue because he's so big, like actually physically getting his head underneath the mare. But he latched on really well, had a really good drink at that stage. We then sort of monitored him the rest of the day. We did also do some blood tests at the same time as well, just to make sure he hadn't had enough colostrum, which he did appear to do so. Yeah, just sort of kept an eye on them and made sure they just carried on bonding and he was able to drink properly.
So with Viennese, because of her retained placenta, what we needed to do in the first instance was to make sure she couldn't have an overwhelming infection. So obviously we used antibiotics, we used anti-inflammatories to protect her from the effects of any infection, but most importantly we needed to get those retained pieces of placenta away. And with Whirl, obviously we were worried that Whirl hadn't taken in enough colostrum. So we were able to milk some of the colostrum directly from mum, and we actually gave him the colostrum directly.
The main difference with Kahlo and Warhol is obviously Kahlo was feral when she came into us, and at that point she hadn't had any handling sort of to help her along her behavioural journey. When these horses are feral, it's really important we leave them well alone as best possible. They don't want human intervention interfering with them. We want them to have sort of nice hormones flowing so they can give birth naturally without interference. So I went to the field and just sort of looked from afar, make sure he was drinking well, passing poo, urinating, the normal foal things. And he did look really good, apart from I noticed he was just struggling a little bit to pass feces. Again, in this situation, normally with a sort of normally handled mare and foal, I would probably step in, examine and see why he was struggling. But with mummy and baby, I didn't want to step in too soon because again, mare-foal bonding. So we monitored him for a period of time, and I did go there myself repeatedly to check on him and sort of watch him on the field. And after sort of 24 hours, he was still just struggling a little bit. We decided actually we probably should step in at that stage. So I called on the behavioural team, who I work with very closely with normally, and two of the most experienced staff came and helped. Caught the foal up in the sort of kindest possible way we could, very safely, keeping us safe, keeping the foal safe, and very quickly examined him. I gave him a very quick foal check, make sure he was healthy otherwise, and just gave him some treatment to help him pass some poo, which he did very successfully afterwards, and then he had no problems after that. I think really at Redwings it's very much an individual basis, so we have such a broad spectrum of horses coming in, be they completely feral, so really well handled. So it depends on the mare and the foal, and I think really they get the most sort of natural management as possible, but then if we need to be, we do step in. We have a whole veterinary team who can step in and help at the point of any issues arising.
When all the veterinary treatment had finished, it was a joy for everyone in the vet team and on the farms to see Viennese and Will really thriving, and they absolutely went from strength to strength, and obviously one day we are hoping they will find their forever homes.